Last week was one of the biggest events in the history of the Article V convention movement. 49 states gathered for the purpose of restraining DC tyranny. Over 100 commissioners arrived in Williamsburg, Virginia on Wednesday for the start of the simulated Article V convention, which ran through Friday. On Thursday morning, Louisiana's Woody Jenkins and Senator Jason Rayford of Arkansas were elected convention president and vice president, respectively.
All right, we have a majority of states. I would announce that the next president of the 2023 Convention of States is Representative Woody Jenkins. Sir.
But one provision has never been used, and that's our Article V Convention, which was really a check on Congress, where Congress is the problem or part of the problem. The people can bypass Congress to make the changes. And that's really why we're here, to see if that can work.
When people say that we might make a runaway convention, I'm going to tell you that America and Washington, D.C. is running away right now.
The body then dismissed to 3 committees, one for each of the following subject matters: term limits and judicial jurisdiction, fiscal restraints, as well as executive and legislative jurisdiction. These committees considered hundreds of submitted proposals. Al Torres, the winner of last year's COS Voices contest, was on hand to witness this historic event as a representative for the citizen grassroots.
It's an honor, and I'm humbled to be here to try to represent everybody. I'm trying to take it all in so I can bring the story back. It's what you guys do that make this happen today.
Friday's plenary session was live streamed to the world, with Rita Peters, Michael Ferris, Mark Meckler, and Rick Santorum providing commentary.
This is hard work, but it's worth it. And so I was very, very impressed with the seriousness.
The commissioners engaged in lively debate regarding the proposals as presented by the committees, making points of order.
Yes, sir. Come to the front, if you would.
Under Mason's manual, I challenge the chair on that ruling and ask for a vote on the floor.
Amendments.
Be the proposal that you have on the screen with the additional sentence at the end. This article shall not apply to military officers or enlisted personnel.
All right.
Hopefully
any questions about this?
And roll call votes.
The Secretary will call the roll.
Alaska. Aye. Arizona.
Aye.
In the end, 6 amendment proposals were successfully adopted. A congressional term limits amendment, an amendment limiting the Supreme Court to 9 justices and allowing the states to bring suit against federal actions, a balanced budget amendment, an amendment restoring the Commerce Clause, an amendment allowing for states to abrogate or overturn acts of Congress or the executive branch, and finally, an amendment that would cede most federally controlled land back to the states. The simulation proved that the process works, that it can be done just as the American framers envisioned. Moreover, it paints a vision for citizens and legislators alike. They can use Article V to reclaim liberty in America and unleash a constitutional renaissance.
When people say, oh, well, don't mess with the Constitution. Well, how did the Constitution get this way? Well, in part, because you gave up power. When I say you, I mean you, the state legislature. The biggest giveaway of power obviously occurred in 1913 with the 17th Amendment, where you controlled me. I was a senator, and I would have had to get appointed by you up until 1913. And you, because of that, had the power to stop everything bad that would affect your state from happening. Because if you didn't like it, you just pull the senator back. And you know how hard it is to get things done in the Congress right now with the Senate. You couldn't get anything done if it affected the power of the state and your prerogative to protect your rights and the rights of the people. But you gave that away. Well, the founders put a second provision in there to put you at the top of the food chain. So you gave away one, and this one, Article V, you've never used. I don't know what that says for all you guys.
There are those out there on both sides of the aisle who oppose what we're doing. We know about the supporters, but there are opponents on both sides of the aisle too. They fear the idea of a runaway convention. We hear this from Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives. In responding to them, I would like to be direct, if perhaps a bit harsh. And in doing so, I will quote one of my favorite founding fathers, and that is Sam Adams. Sam Adams, in dealing with the people and talking about the people who opposed the fight for liberty, said this: if you love wealth better than liberty, If you love the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, then go home from us in peace. We need neither your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you, and may posterity not remember that you were our countrymen.
I think the founders believed that people in the federal government would become corrupt with power because, well, every republic in the history of the world has seen that. So they anticipated that these people who were, leaders of the country would get the opportunity to try to grab more and more and more power. Now, they thought they put a provision there to stop that, but you gave it away. But they put a backstop. And so they expected legislators in Washington to abuse their power, but what they never anticipated is that you wouldn't use your power.
Yeah, they never expected that you wouldn't use your power. Now, Rick Santorum, I put a video out. He did this amazing speech. I only gave a couple of clips from it there, but he did an amazing speech at the simulated convention. Welcome, everybody, to Wednesday Night Live. So here we go again. Today I'm going over the amendment proposals. So there's a lot of people asking for a centralized place. They've been asking to Convention of States Action, really. And I heard on their last live broadcast, they're putting that together. They're going to have a link so you can go straight to it. But I have the proposed amendments. I was able to snip them, and I wanted to go over them. But before I do, I wanted to just kind of put it in context for everybody as far as what the expectations should be. What's the difference between a simulation and a real convention, that sort of thing. So I'm going to start off by kind of explaining that. So before I do, please make sure I want to know where you're from. Leave me a comment. Any comments help the distribution, but I do want to know where you folks are from. I know I got a lot of cool stuff in there. I got people from New Zealand and UK and Australia, all interested in Convention of States, which is amazingly interesting to me. But as I do talk to a lot of our international folks, and we've got about 3,000 or so subscribers who are international, and most of them came on board to the channel because they were interested in the WEF stuff that I was putting out and the Klaus Schwab stuff, because that obviously relates to everyone, but stayed with me because they realize that this convention, while most of them have no idea what the hell it is, as they learned about it, they've come to realize and actually leave comments on the different platforms and will message me directly, because the idea of Save America, Save the World is a very, very real thing. and I think everyone understands, even if they're not happy with the American government or the sanctions that we do, the way we bully with our money and with our control over currency, and obviously the never-ending wars, right? Except for Trump, right? Every president, as soon as Trump was out, boom, we're right back. There's another proxy war going on, feeding the industrial complex. So, so I will say hello, Helena, over in Monmouth County, New Jersey. We know the problems that exist in this country, right? We know what's going on out there. We know what it is that we have to fight. And the question really becomes, how do we fight it? Now, many of us have put have thrown our hat in the ring and basically went all in for Donald Trump, which is fine. I'm totally okay with that. Certainly, you certainly have picked a solid candidate, if for no other reason, the fact that the deep state clearly hates this man more than anything on earth. So, and so for that reason alone, there must be something scaring people. So that's fine. But what I have tried to do on this channel is kind of steer people not away from Trump as a candidate, like I want you to vote for someone else, just steer away from the idea that a president is going to be able to correct the problems in this country. And I think to do that, we got to remind ourselves what the problems in this country actually are in detail. And this particular convention, how are you, Danny? Hello, Scott, over in Union County, Florida. So we got people from all over today, and but I want to focus on this because I want people to really look at what the problems are, right? We can throw out things like, well, the deep state's a problem. Yes, of course it is, right? And we can throw out things like, you know, well, China is a serious problem. The CCP is a major threat to the United States of America. And maybe some people feel, well, look, Trump, you know, went after the CCP, and he did. But the damage, he didn't really damage them, though. And I know the tariffs hurt, but that's not knocking them off the rails. That's not knocking them off, you know, that they're not hurting, you know. In other words, the machine went on. The Confucius Institutes are still embedded in our universities. They still own whatever politicians they owned prior. They still, I mean, they spent 60, 65, 70 years, you know, between the Soviets starting it and then picking up the ball, getting their tentacles into our society and at almost every level. Presidents aren't going to be able to unravel all that. I mean, you can, it's good. Trump was certainly the first president we've had in my lifetime, really ever. Since the birth of the CCP, Trump is the first president who has truly identified them, you know, as an enemy of the United States. Now, I don't know if he understands the levity of it all, but I know that it doesn't matter. Right now, just the president saying, you know, or standing up to China or doing anything averse to China is a step in the right direction. And he has gotten others to do the same, which I think is even more important. So not a bad avenue to take. But the reason why, and I don't mean to say but as if everything I just said was not true, because it was true. I mean but because there's another angle that I want to take here. And on this angle, and the reason I want to take this angle is because it's the one that I have been preaching and I believe in wholeheartedly. And I know that there's only one solution to truly correct the existential problems that this nation faces, the big stuff, the stuff that you think is so far gone that there's no way to do it. Maybe you just think $32 trillion is just insurmountable. We cannot overcome that. Or maybe you think, well, America's a corporation, so nothing can happen. You know, or maybe, the list goes on with the reasons why these problems seem so grandiose that we can't solve them, right? But they are solvable. And that's where Article V comes in. These problems can be corrected. And right now, and again, I don't want people to pigeonhole themselves into the current calling of a convention as if term limits, fiscal restraints, and government overreach amendments are going to fix all of the problems that we have in this nation. All right, because they don't address the border. There's other things they don't address. But what I want people to understand is that it does, number one, those things will fix a lot. Right? So they will fix a lot. Not going to fix everything, but it will fix a lot. But what's really important to understand is that these amendments, you know, depending on what gets ratified and what actually makes it out, what gets out of convention and then what gets ratified once it gets out, right? So, but assuming some powerful stuff does, it will fundamentally change the relationship between the government and we the people. And I think this is where, and then we can elect Trump, and you know, and he'll address the border while we'll handling this. And if anyone tries to get out of line with the border again, you know, then we could turn around and say, you know, look, if you guys don't get this right, we're calling another convention. And that's the beauty of it, because that type of fire that can come from the people haven't thrown a shot. The states themselves have not thrown a shot in the jaw, a meaningful shot at the federal government ever. All right. Well, in a certainly not in our lifetimes, and really not in our parents' and grandparents' lifetimes for the most part either. All right. And so what this does is it throws that blow. Now, they held this convention, and I call it the greatest civics lesson ever told, you know, even though there are some monumental points in history, but we're focusing this towards a lesson, right? Not a historical, happening. Although this was a historical happening. Once a convention is called and gone through, you can bet that history will be looking back at the simulated conventions as well. But one of the things, I got a lot of feedback from people saying they didn't like this about the amendments that were proposed, or they wanted to see this and didn't see it, et cetera. And you're right. To start, there were definitely some things that bothered me about these particular proposals as well. And certainly the biggest one is that I didn't see the proposals that I would have liked to see. Now, once I calmed down and realized the reality that these delegates who, the simulated delegates that went, most of whom were state legislators, which is why Santorum's speech was so powerful, because he was speaking directly to them and their history, as the state legislature. But one of the things we have to remember is they had 3 days to do all of this. And, to put it in perspective to what a real convention would look like, we're talking 6 months. We're talking, 8 months. I mean, I hope we're talking that, but I know we will be, because in the end, what you see when you watch the convention, when you watch the simulated convention, you will see, and my previous videos have the link to that. You can go to Convention Estates Project on YouTube or or Rumble. I believe it's on Facebook too. I'm not sure if it's the same name on Facebook. But anyway, you could go there and see, or to the website, or to the Convention Estates website, click on simulate. They have the simulation there. All right, and you can watch it. They did the last day, they streamed it. And as you watch it work itself out, you can see the technicalities that get involved that you don't think about when you're just imagining what a convention would be like. And it really gets down to, I mean, these guys took it serious. They weren't, it's not like they went in there and just, willy-nillied around. They were getting down to, I'm proposing we add a comma to this sentence because it's a run-on, or I'm because the seriousness of putting something in the Constitution with grammatical errors even is a problem, right? So it was fascinating to watch how they, just went back and forth. I would have loved to see how the committees in the prior 2 days were ironing out their stuff as well, because I think, hold on. Testing. I'm going to see if that works. I had one of the volumes went up. I have all the different stream sites up, and one of them kicked in the volume, which obviously is a problem. But it's gone now, so we don't have to deal with that. There's always got to be something. I was like, things are going so dang smooth so far. There's always got to be something. So, all right. So here's the first one. All right. So I tried to shrink myself and make the amendment as big as possible to allow for as many people to see it, as I can. So this was a term limits proposal, which I had some criticisms on. And again, you have to keep in mind that these committees are trying to iron out as much as they can within 2 days. So, some of the compromises that likely got made, were not, and I mean, that's my take on it, because I think you're going to see as I go through these, there were 6 of them in total that came out. And I'm also going to cover some that were missing. But I do want to see your comments as to what you think about this first one for term limits. So I'll read it off. No person shall be elected to serve in the House of Representatives more than 9 full terms, nor elected or appointed to serve in the Senate more than 3 full terms. This article shall not disqualify any person from completing a term in the Congress to which that person was elected or appointed prior to ratification of this article. So no person shall serve in Congress. Section 2 is no person shall serve in Congress more than 24 years in total. So Danny over on Facebook says prayers for an issue-free show. Yeah, right. They don't happen that often, but I think we're getting there today. So let's break this down. So we've got first of all, 9 terms is far too much. Now I understand it's the House, and the House is 2-year per term. So they're trying to keep the years, I think, somewhat similar. So they're basically giving them up to 18 or 19, 18 years, I guess, is what they think is sufficient. I think that's too long. If I might be open, what do you guys think? I think 18 years in office is just too damn long. And the last part says 24 years in total, meaning you can't do 18 in the House and then go and do 18 in the Senate. If you've done 18, that should be the total number. Like I might be open to that. If you were in the House for 2 terms and you moved to the Senate for 2 terms, then maybe that. But I don't think more than 2 terms is necessary. You know, maybe if you put a buffer in there, like a 5-year, you know, after 2 terms, 5-year buffer, you're allowed to run 1 more term, just to show that you can survive in the freaking private sector, for the love of God. Although, honestly, I even see that being big companies doing favors, hooking them up with fat jobs for 5 years, and then they, you know, now they've loaded their pockets and they send them back in. Yeah, you know, scratch that idea. I'm like thinking my way out of this. Just I'm okay with 2 terms. And you know, why is this important that this proposal right here came out that has no real bite to it because it's not going to the states to be ratified? Why is it important? Why does it matter? Well, the reason why it matters is because this is the kind of thing that should have us thinking, right? This is the kind of thing that we should be thinking about beforehand. When our state legislators are looking for delegates, when they're looking to select delegates, right? Before those delegates go off, like, what's important to us needs to be made clear. And something like how many terms someone should serve is one of those things, right? You're not going to be able to iron out every detail before someone gets selected, but you can make basic, like, no more than 2 terms, to me, should be a no-brainer. Should be a no-brainer. If you want to say 3 for the House, okay. 6 years, that's fine. You can serve 6 years, especially if they have to re-elect you every 2. Like then you serve 6 years. It is what it is. But there needs to be turnover, and we need to be focused on turnover. Like frankly, one of the things that was missing, all right, and I'll just throw it up front because it's not there, right? So one of the things that's missing is the overturn of the 17th Amendment. Like, that needs to get overturned. It's BS that it was done in the first place, but it needs to get overturned. If the states are really going to take back their power, they need to make up for that sin. They need to atone for that sin of the state legislator forefathers to allow that to happen. And that particular year, right, was just the ripe conditions for the left to go nuts. In 1913, if you're not aware, all right, it's the most infamous year in my mind, right, from a policy standpoint. We passed this, we ratified the 16th Amendment, which brought income tax into play from the federal government, which gave Congress really control over the nation's wealth. All right, this whole loophole favors exchange game, right? This all started there. All right, before that, all right, you had the monopoly players, right? The men who built America, as they say, the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and, you know, Rockefellers and J.P. Morgans, right? These guys would be using their immense wealth while they were still monopolies, were using their immense wealth to corrupt things, right? That now they broke up the monopolies. The experiment continues, right? For a while it was like, nope, everybody gets to, do what they want to do as far as business. Then we realized, all right, monopolies are not good, right? Because you can't compete against the monopoly. They just buy up everything and then it's a wrap. So this is a part of the process, but by giving the federal government that control is insane. And then right after that, so that happened, they ratified the 16th. All right, just talk about having the right climate of people. They ratified the 16th Amendment. I believe it was, I want to say it was February of 1913. Yeah, February of 1913, the 16th was ratified. Then in April, all right, just a couple months later, they went ahead and ratified the 17th. And just to kick it off and put the cherry on the sundae, And if you don't know what the 17th Amendment is, I realize I didn't explain it. The 17th Amendment took away power from the states to control the federal Senate. So before the 17th Amendment, as the founders intended, state legislatures appointed federal senators. They were not elected by us. They were appointed. And there's a reason for that, because they can be retracted. And why would we retract them? Well, how do you think Utah felt about Liz Cheney in the last 3 years of her term? If the people of Utah could go to their local legislators and say, we want her out, is that not closer to the people with respect to power than having to sit there and wait 6 years? I mean, if she goes rogue the day after she's elected, 6 years, the people have no say. You know how much damage somebody could do in 6 years? The founders knew this. They were well aware of this. And wisely had these people appointed by the state legislatures. Well, the state legislatures gave away that power in this infamous year of 1913. And then just to cap it off with a cherry on a sundae, you've got Woodrow Wilson, who clearly is the worst president in American history. There was not even a close second. Even Biden, as he drools on himself and falls down the stairs, is I guess he's competing. If you want to say Biden is actually making these decisions, which I don't believe he is, but if you want to say he's making these decisions, then okay, you could say his policies are in hard competition with Woodrow Wilson. But Woodrow Wilson, on December 23rd, dubiously, of 1913, dubiously signed the Fed into existence. That's right, the central bank. So if you think it's a coincidence that they get the 16th Amendment passed, where the government pretty much takes over control of the nation's wealth with a pen, then they eliminate the state legislature's power and authority to remove a senator. Then they introduce the Fed. That is not a coincidence. That entire group is one of the most corrupt and friggin', I can't even deal with it. Danny says, put back in the constitutional framework. It could be handled much differently. Short terms is a senior in high school to 25 years old. It's not supposed to be that hard. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's not supposed to be their way out of life. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Danny. You're absolutely right. And that's look, a lot of this drives me nuts, but I want to get back onto. I'm going to take a couple more comments here. I got a couple from Wild Stallion over on YouTube. So I would only be okay with Proposal 1 if 17A got repealed. So yeah, right. If 17A was repealed, then it wouldn't be such a big term limits in general wouldn't be as big a deal if these people could be pulled out. I mean, you'd still have to put them on the House, but as far as the Senate, you don't really need term limits if you can yank people. Yeah, you do. You still need them. I keep talking myself. I keep trying to come up with a new idea, and then I talk myself out of it. But excellent point there. Excellent point. And then what was going on in the USA in the early 1900s? They allowed the disastrous 16, 17, and 18A all to go through. I don't know what was. I know with the income tax, they were threatening higher tariffs. So they were no one understood what an income tax was, and they were very much lied to in how they were going to implement it, and said, "Oh, it's only going to affect the top 0.3% of wealth." Basically, we're only going after Carnegies and those type of people. And and again, we didn't have the history back then of being lied to by these folks at the level that we do now. If they tried to pull that crap now, it'd be like, what? Get out of here. Yeah, it's only for them. Sure it is. If you look at how it's written, it should have been right on the wall what they were planning on doing. All right. And the fact is, it needs to go. That, the 17th, neither one were addressed in this convention. And I'm in the simulated convention. And again, I'm gonna default that to a lack of time. Those are two things, because it's not that it takes a lot of time to say, I want to repeal this. The 17th, they should have been able to do. The 16th, there's a lot of thought that has to go into that, as far as not about getting rid of it, but what's going to replace it, right? And in my opinion, it needs to be a fair tax, not a flat tax, a fair tax. I hear these people mixing up the two. They are not the same thing. Flat tax is a flat, you're still taxing income. The entire concept of taxing income is theft, period. Period. And frankly, property tax isn't much different. The fact that I could buy my home and it can still be seized from me forcibly, that I could pay for it in full and it could still be seized from me forcibly, is not acceptable in a society that considers itself free. And so these types of things require rethinking. They require some serious debate. And those things, those things would get that debate in a real convention, which is why it would take so much longer. So the second federal term limits and judicial jurisdiction proposal. So the Supreme Court of the United States shall consist of 9 judges, any 6 who shall constitute a quorum, which means the minimum amount to decide on something. So in other words, we're fixing it at 9, right? Which is good, right? We'd fix it at 9. No more of this. We'll all just stack the court nonsense, because the founders were not clear on exactly how many justices there should be. And while we've been able to be civil about it for long enough, in the end, it takes one do to come in and start playing with this thing. And next thing you know, we're going to end up with like 75 justices, and it's just out of control. So, and they're saying there need to be at least 6 present, right, to make any type of decision. And then each of the several states shall have standing to bring action challenging the constitutionality of any action of the executive branch or any enactment of Congress. So again, giving the states the ability to say no, right? A formal ability to say no, not like nullification, where it's really sketchy and we could do it, but it's debatable, and like trying to eliminate that debate, right? Is that, Scott McCaw says you never own your home. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Property tax is one of the most, I understand what it pays for, but I also understand that there are other ways, there are other things you could tax. There's no need to tax someone's property. There just isn't. And the fact that you like the fact, I mean, the idea, right, that the original Constitution draft was going to be life, liberty, and property, not pursuit of happiness, right? Cool story. Jefferson changed it to pursuit of happiness because, Jefferson, the slave owning, racist guy, changed it to pursuit of happiness because he understood that it would be interpreted as, well, we have the right to life, liberty, and property, and the slaves are our property, right? But it was originally with good intention written as life, liberty, and property, and we haven't been allowed to have our own property in forever. I mean, I don't know when property tax first became a thing. That's a state issue. That's not a federal issue. States are charging property tax, but it's just the point that the idea that they can seize your property that you own and you've made your payments and you own is never acceptable. So good comment there, Scott. I appreciate that. Did citizens just pay taxes to the states before the 16A? There were tariffs. So citizens, if you went to purchase something, you paid a tax on it. Okay. So you controlled the tax that you spent. Now, as the Boston Tea Party showed us, there's a limit to how much of a stomach people have for taxes. But when you have a consumption tax, all right, or tariffs as they're called, when you have a consumption tax, everybody contributes to the tax game. There's no more of this, 50% of the country gets more back in return, or at least gets what they put in back in returns at the end of every year, while 10% of the country carries the load. The idea of the deficit in spending, all right, or in revenue would not be fixed by a consumption tax is insane. All right. If you were taking 5% of the entire consumer index out there, look, that is a fair way. It's not like there's no tax that should ever be paid ever. There's no tax that should ever be mandatory ever, and that's different. So if I want to go buy this thing, if I want to go buy this car, I want to go buy this. Yeah, you could tack on a little more for yachts and and for extravagant stuff. Fine, the people buying those things generally can afford that stuff, but a reasonable wage, knowing that the states too are going to have a reasonable percent. So you're looking at possibly 5% each. Keep in mind, the federal government, when run properly and when run under the 10th Amendment, it's got the military. That's it. The military. That's what it has to run. The states are in charge of everything else. Everything else. Because when you let the federal government take charge of those things, they do what they're doing now, and they abuse that power. There's nothing from healthcare to freaking, you name it. There's nothing that the states cannot handle that the federal government can. Or I should say it the other way around. There's nothing the federal government can handle that the states cannot. They have no place in education. They have no place in work safety. They have no place in environmental whatever. They have no place in any of this. Any of it. None of it. And using their emergency powers the way they do, why on earth would you want these people, knowing how corrupt and evil they are? Why would you want them to have control of those things? Yeah, there's some soul searching that needs to get done by the American people. Some real soul searching. Do you want your freedom or do you want your whoopee? Right? You may own your house. So hello, Luana. She says you may own your house, but you never own the land. No, you don't own the house either. They take it all. They take it all. Yeah, and they ain't even shy about it. Some of these people, like it's not even. Some of these people are trying to make their payments and there's some confusion, and they just go in and snatch it up. It depends what state you're in, but don't think states are innocent in this tax game, because they ain't. They've done some grimy stuff. But again, that's stuff that can get handled at a local level. It's a lot easier, folks, to handle politics in your neighborhood than it is to handle it on the scale of the United States. That is why the federal government is not. It's not that no government should ever regulate any of this. It's that the federal government should not be regulating any of this. That's the difference. That's the difference. But all in all, I like the proposal number 2. So let's take a look here. This one's a little longer. Let me get a sip of water. All right, so this one is on fiscal restraints, and it's wishy-washy. I don't like it. It's pretty much a balanced budget amendment, and it's soft. So again, they're pressed for time. So I'm sure there were people in the room saying there need to be teeth behind this. But I'm sure there were people in the room trying to come up with every single, but what if this happens? Or what if that happens? And try, well, we can have a balance. But, is this, to me, doesn't, there's ways that they will still overspend. But let's read it. Congress shall adopt a preliminary fiscal year budget no later than the first Monday in May for the following fiscal year and submit said budget to the president for consideration. Federal expenditures for each year shall not exceed average annual revenue collected, right? So they're going to take it out, which is fair. I mean, that's how you set a budget, right? You got to estimate what you're going to be collecting, and then you set your budget accordingly. So, and that's in the prior 3 fiscal years. So it shall not exceed, the spending shall not exceed the revenue that's collected in the prior 3 fiscal years. So total expenditures shall include all expenditures of the United States, including those for payment of interest on debt. So that's good because they didn't blow that off. That's the kind of loophole. And these are the kind of details that are necessary. Like you have to kind of preempt what they're going to try and do, right? Like when you pass an amendment like this, you're going to have to preempt how the court is going to bastardize it, right? Because that's why we're in this situation. If it wasn't the courts that had over the century granted all these freaking powers to the federal government, we wouldn't be in this situation of having to amend the Constitution to correct it. But they did. It was the courts. And that's why no president can fix it, and that's why Congress cannot fix it. We are the only ones left after that. You know, people are telling you in this bastardized world of civics that the Supreme Court is the final word. They are not. The Supreme Court tried to tell the left, you're not allowed to tax income. It's unconstitutional. The left got through an amendment, number 16, we just got done talking about, and changed the course of the nation, the control of the nation's wealth forever. Well, not forever, until we get this convention, right? So let's continue on. Total expenditures shall, so we got that part. So total revenue shall include all revenue from the United States except that derived from borrowing. Now, I'm not sure what they're trying to say here, so I don't like the language. First of all, you just got done saying it includes the interest on the debt, and then you turn around and say all revenue shall include all revenue United States except that derived from borrowing. Any surplus of revenue and expenditures in any fiscal year shall be applied to outstanding federal debt. Oh, you know what? I do understand what they're saying, and it's not nearly as bad as I thought. And I don't know why I misunderstood it now. I read this like 3 times, and I understood it the first 2. What they're saying with the borrowing, if you didn't already get it, and I'm just slow, what they're saying with the borrowing is that you can't, any money you get, we borrow money from, you know, we sell bonds to China or something like that, that does not count as revenue. Right? You can't count that as, oh, we took that in as revenue, is what they're saying. And you can see how specific, it's probably why I just jumped over it, because like, why would you have to articulate that? Because they know what they're dealing with, right? They know what they're dealing with. And it is not unthinkable that the federal government will start to pretend that borrowed money is earned. Well, none of it is earned, but borrowed money is revenue. Section 2, Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses of Congress by roll call vote deem it necessary, may exceed the spending limit in Section 1 for one fiscal year by borrowing as provided for in the second clause, the second clause of the 8th section of Article 1 of this Constitution. So again, I think that's way too easy. That's way too easy to misinterpret. This one is actually the one that I was waiting. This is where it gets, this is how we got into this problem. This is how we got into this problem. It's not, you don't have to start. Obviously, the nation may need to borrow money at a given point in time. However, the idea that the budget, you know, even when you have a budget, you borrow money from time to time. You might still use a credit card, even though you've set a budget for your family. But the question is, how much are you using? How far is it going over? You're giving them a year. Like, to me, it's not the biggest problem with this proposal, but it's a significant one. And then Section 3, taxes levied under the 8th section of Article 1 of this Constitution shall not be raised to increase the revenue of the United States unless 2/3 of both houses of Congress by roll call vote will concur, which is, you know, it's fine. I don't have again, the problem with this overall amendment is that it's not going to end in a balanced budget. And that's, you know, there's no teeth, right? And if I'm sitting in that room, I'm saying the one thing you don't have in here is teeth. Like, and I don't know if you know, this is what this is going to come down to, folks. This is where choosing the delegates is important. And that this is where Mike Arnold told me, regional director over with Convention of States, where he was on the broadcast one day and was like, it doesn't end with getting 34 states. It's like, it begins there. And he's absolutely right. And we need to be engaged in the process all the way down the line. All the way down the line. and we need to be fully engaged with who our states are selecting as delegates. We need, and because we want delegates who are bold, right? We want delegates who are not going to these wishy-washy, to pick politicians. You don't want Mitt Romney representing Utah at a convention of states, right? You don't want these wishy-washy people who, we had a compromise. And you want principled people who understand what we're up against and understand that you don't get that many shots to do this. So, when it comes to it, what would I like to see? I'd like to see them say, if the budget is not balanced, if the United States does spend more than it takes in, then those involved, those in current office, will not be eligible to run again. That until the budget is balanced, the people who failed to balance it will no longer be eligible to run for another term. If you want them to balance that budget, you put that in there. It'll get balanced. You bet you will. You bet you it will. And I don't want to hear from people that's too strong. It's this and that. I don't want to hear it. It's, you can set a limit and be like, all right, if you exceed more than, but that limit needs to be like enough to carry for spillover. You know what I mean? Not like I made no like Ukraine funding or, any crap like that. None of it. None of it. We got to, sooner or later, folks, there's got to be an adult in the room. Like, we need to be able, as people, as the American people, we need to be able to allow ourselves to be talked to as an adult. And stop getting triggered over everything. And don't think that we don't all have something to get triggered over, because we do. I don't, but it took me, like, there was a time when I did, and I don't now. And I plan my life accordingly, assuming nothing from the government will be available. And if I wish that I was smart enough to plan my life that way when I was younger. So I got a late start at that game, but the reality is I'm 50 years old. I'm not expecting Social Security. I'm not expecting Social Security because generations of people who were collecting Social Security kept falling for they're going to push grandma off the cliff bullshit. That's why I'm not expecting it to be there. Because nobody at any point ever said, let's be an adult. Let's sit here. And, all right, it's going to go bankrupt. So what do we do? And as soon as someone comes up with a reasonable suggestion, some freaking rhino or leftist, whatever, comes out, oh, this person wants to push grandma over a cliff. And we turn around like idiots and we don't vote for that person on that issue. So now nobody comes out on that issue, and we just sit here because no one who's collecting the check at that time cares, because they're getting it. And even they aren't dumb enough to believe that it's just going to keep, well, we just keep doing it. It's just going to keep working. Even though we're taking in so much less than it don't matter. People are living to friggin' 90 now. It's okay. You don't need to make any, you make any change, we're going to vote you out of office. Like, there's stuff that at some point we have to take accountability for stuff too. But this balanced budget amendment, like C-. If I had to give a grade, I would say C-. All right, let me see here. We got Donald McClay. How are you, Donald? Said, greetings. I agree. The wording is weak. Yes, the wording is incredibly weak. It's definitely not. But again, I don't know how much of that is just, dude, I can't even fathom how they got this done in 2 days. Really, we had 3 days total, but like the first day you get in there, you're unpacking, it's like, I don't know how they got this much done. But I tell you, there is some insight as to the fact that there are things that state legislators are pissed off about regarding the federal government. And some of them came out and I'll show you in the last one, which you're going to be like, why were they focused on that with such limited time? It clearly triggered a lot of people. So Danny says, if we upheld our duty and had well-organized militia, accountability would happen. Yeah. If we had a well-organized militia, I mean, I in today's world, what does that mean? Right? I mean, a well-organized militia, like we do, it's called the military. Like the problem is we don't control the government anymore, right? And that's what we're trying to fix. So, I mean, you know, having militias, like an organized militia on the streets, I don't know how that's helpful in today's day and age. There is no threat to it. We do have a pretty, I mean, they're not well organized, but we have a militia. So I think if we, 300 million guns or so, out in the American populace, and millions, 100 million or more Americans who are fully trained on how to use them. All right, we call it illegal and punishable up to death. I'm sorry, that one came up while I was probably saying, so yeah, we're all militia. Yeah, absolutely. That's my point. So we're on the same page, Danny. All right, we're on the same page. So as far as the fiscal restraints, like I said, I'm just simply not impressed. Federal term limits and federal term limits. Did I do that? That was the wrong doc, I think. Let me, give me a moment here. The last one was the fiscal restraints, so this should have been number 1. I will find it. There we go. All right. So the federal legislative and executive jurisdiction proposal 1, right? So section 1, huge issue here they tackled. And, some of these issues that they hit were home runs and well, home runs, but softballs, right? So they went out of the park, but they were playing some slow pitch softball. This was stuff that has to get done. Commerce among the states shall mean. Now, what do they mean by, just to start off? They're defining commerce. So if you're not familiar, commerce, the Commerce Clause, right, in the Constitution has been bastardized by the courts forever. It has opened up the floodgates for the federal government to really just do whatever the hell it wants. It's only supposed to empower them across state lines. That language has been bastardized, and they do literally whatever they want now. And there's just absolutely no excuse for it. But the courts have sanctioned it through decision. And again, it's because the courts sanction these things over time, right? That's the reason. And here it is. So this is what we're talking about, folks. You see that big 3,000-page Constitution of the United States of America compared to the pocket version right there? That's full, chock full of bad court decisions. Chock full of bad court decisions. And those are what we're trying to undo. So what they're doing here is they're trying to just add some depth and add some like make this so that even these dumb justices who are sitting on the bench right now who don't know what a woman is can figure it out. Right? Like that's what they're doing. Because we'll get to a day someday, all right, where you're going to have, some wacky leftist mix of freaking justices on the Supreme Court. So, like, the fact that the courts have been kind of holding it down for the most part and staying for the most part within the Constitution, sometimes for the wrong reasons, as I mentioned, Gorsuch and Thomas, and really Alito to a good degree, are the only real, like Amy Barrett and Kavanaugh. These people are going to be your next John Roberts. All right, just mark my words. When you read these people's opinions, these people are going to be the next John Roberts. And I mean, the only two that wrote opinions saying that with respect to the mandates, the vaccine mandates, yeah, they struck them down, but not for all the same reasons. right? Amy Barrett and Kavanaugh were kind of on the side of, well, it doesn't clearly, Congress didn't explicitly give them the authority to do this, so therefore they can't do it. Whereas Gorsuch and Thomas were like, I don't care if Congress did give them the authority to do this. They don't have the authority to give them the authority to do this. And that's the correct answer, right? So don't take as much solace in the court justices as you may. They are not as constructionist across the board as we believe, right? So, but they're the reason the Commerce Clause became a mess. So now they're saying Commerce Clause among the states, or commerce among the states shall mean buying, selling, or transportation of commercial goods and services across state lines. Congress shall not delegate any rulemaking function related to commerce among the states to any executive official or agency, right? So in other words, they don't get to, states can negotiate. If there's something going on that requires Congress's involvement, then the states will come and get them. But the states don't, just because something happens in multiple states doesn't mean you get to regulate it. Like if there's no beef, you don't get to regulate that. And that's the clarity. And I love they get so specific with this. Any federal law or regulation existing at the time of ratification of this amendment in conflict with this amendment shall become null and void 2 years after the date of ratification of this amendment. For purposes of this Constitution, now, this is how little faith they have in federal legislators and how much they understand the tactics that get used between the courts and the federal government. All right. For purposes of this Constitution, navigable waters shall be limited to surface waters actively used for transport of goods and commerce among the states. So they know that, like, when they say navigable waters, right? The federal government tries to open that up to like mean any drop of water on the freaking earth, right? Like if I could run a rowboat through this creek, well, then it's navigable waters. Like they're being specific because they know. And this is one of the overall themes that I think I got out of this experience that I thought was promising, right? And that is they took this seriously, and you could see, even with the limited amount of time, you know, they all have a consensus on how the federal government and Supreme Court tend to operate hand in hand, and how the court has forever in our history sided with the federal government, at least in the modern history. And that's something that they need to get correct. Like right now, you could feel it coming out of the state legislators that and these were most of these people were state legislators. So they're coming from experience. They're coming from having dealt with the federal government, and they know very well the type of trickery and verbal gymnastics that can pass in a court. Okay. And they're saying what they're saying now to the court and to the federal government is, we're done with the games, and we'll do this convention again if we have to. Right. And I would love to see that type of message come, you know, and I'm dying to see, you know, because you think there's detail here. There's going to be immense detail. And it's either going to be detailed or it's going to be incredibly sweeping, right? Like, I'm kind of a fan of the incredibly sweeping stuff, right? But you know, I understand, right, that there's nuance and there are things to be considered. I get that. But I like things like the Second Amendment, where shall not be infringed, period. Like, that's it. Well, we're thinking the militia might be, is what you want to do infringing it? Well, then here, read this. And it's just over, right? So, and even then, even when it's so clear, like, there are still justices. If we had, you know, 9 Sotomayor's on there, they would freaking ban guns altogether. They run under that Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's a living document. The courts get to decide how it stays current. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And there's a preemptive smack on the hand of the courts here too. to kind of, you know, like defining navigable waters to me is like a dig at the court. That's like, you know what, guys, because you're too incompetent to define that, we're going to define it for you now, so that you don't go down that river again, pun intended. All right. This is still, I'm not sure what's going on here, but fortunately, these are very easy fixes and they don't involve audio and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But all right, so federal term limits judicial and judicial jurisdiction proposal 2. Supreme Court. Wait, we did this one already, did we not? Hold on, maybe I gotta. Oh, here we go. All right, 3. So federal legislative executive jurisdiction proposal 3. This is the one where everybody was kind of scratching their heads. I watched Meckler and Company talk about this a little bit, and it's interesting. The question really was, with the limited time, why this one? Because I'm going to get into a little bit the ones that they left out that I was like, why did you leave these out? But with this one, it says, except with the permission of the legislature of the state where the land is located, the national government shall not own, regulate, or control land or mineral rights, nor the proceeds from the sale of the same, except for the purposes of expressly enumerated in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So this was written, there are states, I mean, more to the west than the east, which is another reason why this became weird to me, because I was just like not that I don't think, you know, states that don't have a lot of federal land, like Pennsylvania or New York, aside from like national parks, but like that don't have a lot of federal land, I don't know why they care about this as much in a time crunch setting like this. I could see them in a full convention going through with this. And what they're saying basically, this is places like Nevada is a state that's hit really bad with this. The federal government has just controlled massive swaths of land for no reason. And it's the states are just saying, look, and I think this is why, you know, if for nothing else, I think this came through to actually send a real message to the federal government, right? I think that like this is what the state legislators, this is the stuff that's on their mind. They don't like the fact that you've hijacked all of this state land and just claimed it for yourself when it's not yours. You've stolen it, and so, you know, in that sense, in the spirit of that sense, the states are saying, I think the eastern states kind of got on board with the western, saying, we see what your problem is, and yes, this is absolutely not something the federal government should be doing. So the second section, the national government shall not own, regulate, or control more than 10% of the land and mineral rights in any given county or county equivalent, except with the express consent of the legislature of the state in which the land is located. Right? When that exception should be given, right? I mean, if the state legislature lets you do it, you can do it. It's kind of what having the power is all about. So, Section 3, Congress shall return or cede all remaining lands and mineral rights to the state in which it is located within 10 years from the effective date hereof. So basically, you got 10 years to give it all back, folks. I don't know why it took 10 years. I know why they'll add 2 years, 3 years to things, because these are major changes and they need to, you know, they take time to prepare, to plan, etc. But 10 years? Does it take 10 years? I don't know. I guess it depends, you know, depends on what type of properties we're talking about. But, and then for purposes of this amendment, Section 4, control shall mean any combination of federal regulations, treaties, land use designations, and like measures which exert control over the land within a county and a state, which has the effect individually or in the aggregate of rendering all or any substantial portion of the land non-taxable, or renders the land unsusceptible to multiple use and sustained yield. So, you know, my point earlier about property tax probably, you know, Depends where you live, though, right? You take up your issues in your own states. It's how it should be. But you see the gist of this amendment, right? I'm not going to go through all of these points because it's, look, they want the federal government turning over land that it's claimed for itself. Now, and I think that it's a noble gesture to do that. Okay. So let me just flip through these and make sure that's all of them, right? Yeah, I think so. The last set of 3 was, so you get an idea, so what did we learn from this experience, right? Like what did we learn as far as, what are they, how does this work, right? And that's what we've learned, is how this works. You've got these organizations, John Birch Society, you've got out there, you've got George Soros's Common Cause, and some other organization, Media Matters, and the Publius Huldas of the world, right? This Joanne Martin, doo-doo-doo. You've got these organizations all coalescing together. I mean, John Birch Society, this is an organization that spent the whole first freaking quarter of its existence trying to get a convention of states called. I don't know what the hell rails they went off of. Clearly someone got to them, right? Now that all the leadership, the original leadership, is dead, this is the path that they're taking. But you have these organizations out there trying to scare everybody out of using power, and they're doing it, but because the only ammunition they have is that we've never formally held a convention for proposing amendments under Article V. There have been hundreds of conventions held. How they run is not, it's not like these guys went in there and had to read a manual as to how to conduct themselves. They understood very well. They're legislators. They understand how these proceedings work. They understand calls to order. They understand all of it. So it was not, I mean, yeah, they elected the head while they were there. They did, those types of things. But that's all, they set the rules for how the committee's going to run, for the procedure and how it's going to run. And these are not, we have to get off. Folks, if we can't trust ourselves, then what are we even fighting for? Like there are amazing people in state legislatures all across this country. Don't get yourself jaded by looking at California and New York as if that's what a state legislature operates as. It's not. It's not. These are incredibly good people. So Drink Coaster 22 over on Twitch. What's the deal with that map? So I assume that you mean this map right next to me. So that is the Convention of States progress map. So you will see the 19 states with stars that have already signed on to the convention. They've passed, let me see. Yeah. So that those 19 stars are all the states that have already passed a resolution calling for the convention. Okay. And now you can get a bigger version of that on the Convention of States website, but we need 34 in total in order to have the convention called. But really, we need 38. Let's be real. We need 38 states because that's what it takes to ratify an amendment. 34 will call the convention. All 50 states will be invited. It's not just the 34 who called for it. All 50 will be invited. As written in the Constitution, Congress shall call the convention once it receives 34 petitions from the states. So there's no option for Congress. And really, once they've served that administrative duty, they're done. That's it. That's Congress's entire involvement in this whole thing. The courts have even governors have no say in this. This is 100% about your district legislators who are controlling this process, as designed by the founders for good reason. And so 19 states, and I can tell you, as they come over, right? And this is why, I won't let up on this channel. Like, I understand I could sit here and I could talk to people about, Trump's indictment, or maybe heat everyone up over Trump and DeSantis, and maybe play up Ramaswamy and really start to prey on people's click intentions, right? But that's not where I'm at, because I don't believe those things are going to fundamentally save our country. I think who gets elected president is important. I think there are things that are not covered in this convention that need to get dealt with right away, and that president will matter. You know, the border, perfect example, right? So there's importance to those things, but that's not going to save the country. No president is capable of saving the country. The country's too far gone for that. The Supreme Court has done too much damage in empowering this beast, this machine. You cannot undo that power through office. You can't elect someone to undo that power. Not in any lasting and meaningful way. That has to come from us. So if we recognize, right, that even if the economy is good or bad at a given point in time, if the national debt is continuing to skyrocket, we are still driving at the same speed towards the cliff. You follow me? Like, I get it. When Trump was in, better, more jobs, you know, but I get it. But the truck with the country in it that was heading towards the cliff didn't even slow down. Matter of fact, it sped up. And it will continue to speed up until we be the adult in the room and stop it. These other folks don't have, it's not that Trump doesn't want to stop it or DeSantis doesn't want to stop it. It's they can't. There's just no power there to do that. I mean, Trump can't get a regular piece of legislation passed. Forget, not that I don't love the hoorah, and I do miss the way he says China, but as far as actual legislation, it wasn't big on that. It wasn't his thing. You got prison reform and maybe the tax reform, which was not reform. It was a rhino Republican tax cut. But that being said, that's what he could get passed, and that's what he got. The point is, no matter what, they ain't saving it. It's this. It's this that's saving it. This is it. And no matter what country you're in, when you watch this, you know that if the United States falls, it's over for everyone. As Yuri Bezmenov said, he said, unlike me, you will have nowhere left to defect to. And he was right. He was absolutely right. So let's get into some of these comments. So Biden just made the Grand Canyon National Park, which now stops the mining of uranium around the canyon, makes us dependent on Russia for a big portion of uranium, another land grab. Yeah, and this is kind of what the legislators are getting at with that last. Thank you, Luana, for that. That's what the legislators in this convention were getting at when it comes to federal lands. Like they just take stuff, and it's like, at what point? Like they're so it's like everyone calling the country a democracy. Like it's just something that people have been doing for so long that the truth almost doesn't even matter to people anymore. The federal government doesn't have this jurisdiction. You're going to make the Grand Canyon a national park. I mean, look, that's not a decision for the federal government, right? And this is why, and it's really in areas like the Grand Canyon, right? Nevada's a huge one, around Colorado. Like all those areas are the ones who are most adamant about that thing. But you know what? The East Coast, they got on with it, and they passed it, and they made it a priority. And on that note, I want to just talk about some things that didn't get done that I thought should have been a higher priority. So I'm not taking it as being concerned, but I think on our part, as delegates are getting chosen, we need to be more vocal about these issues. Single subject amendment must. Like if they walk out of there without a single subject amendment, you throw them back in, right? Balanced budget amendment, I wish it had teeth, but at least they took a shot, right? 16th, 17th amendments, gone. They got to go. At minimum, the 17th. How does a group of state legislators get together and twice, not once, twice, give their power away to the federal government? Like you did it once, and now you realize how much of a sin that was, and you're back in the room again, and you did it again? Like that's just unacceptable to me. The more I think about the 17th Amendment piece, the more I'm just like, but again, I'm going to hope I'm going to hope that that it was just a situation of not having enough time and wanting to send the message. You know, I think that land piece was just wanting to send a message to the government now. Like, I think they were kind of taking it beyond the simulation. How you doing, Rocky, over in Thailand? Good to see you. And Rocky with a comment. So absolutely, we must at least speak up. Yeah, absolutely. We must speak up in a big way, right? We must speak up in a big way. So Luana says, it's sad what has happened to the John Birch Society. My dad back in the 60s was a member, and the John Birch Society of today is, no, it's totally different. The organization today has no history, really. Like, when people tell you it goes back to the 60s, like, it has no history. Like, the founders are gone, and what's going on now is and John Birch himself was, from what I understand, was not, you know, his wife, I guess it was like, you know, he would want no part of this. And so, but the thing about the John Birch Society, they do more damage than Soros. They could both come out with the same message, but when conservatives, I can tell you that this Publius Hulda, Joanne Martin, a real character she is. Go on Ballotpedia and look her up. You know, but in the end, she's another one going around on this mission to stop a convention of states. And you know, you listen to these people and the fear tactics that they're using and the way that they're trying at taking quotes out of context and doing all the stuff that come from like a Soros playbook. But what kills me is when you watch them testify, you'll see some like older, you know, some older Americans, you know, I would say minimum 65, you know, maybe in their 70s or so. And as she's saying some of the most absurd things ever, they're like nodding their head. So it's crazy that like these people, John Birch, etc., this John Birch Society, etc., are taking otherwise Constitution-loving Americans and completely polluting their freaking heads. And it's a cult. It really is a cult. There's you know, a good buddy of mine now. We had some fun together. Kenneth Quinn has his channel, All Things Article 5 on YouTube. If you're a John Birch Society person and it bothers you, John Birch Society, or that I say these things about the John Birch Society, go to that channel. He started it just to slap around this Robert Brown guy for trying to pretend he's some kind of scholar and offering a $10,000 challenge to anyone who could show quotes that the founders of this nation were fully believed that they were within their commissions to do what they did. And they obviously were. If you're one of those who thinks they weren't, read Federalist Paper 40, so you don't have to take it from me. You can take it from Madison, right? You can take it from Madison because he outlines exactly why they were within their commission to do it. But there are more. And Kenneth Quinn found a whole bunch and just absolutely just started doinking this dude over there to the point where he came on, because he put up a few teaser videos like saying he's going to do it. And Robert Brown actually started commenting like, I haven't seen one yet. I haven't seen one. So I went on and started trolling the dude. Like, because I know what Ken was doing. He's trying to build his channel. He's trying to get up some views. He's trying to build up a little bit of hype because you want to be able, nobody wants to speak to no one, right? So you want to build your channel up. You're vested in that, right? It's not about the money, right? I monetized on Facebook. I could do things that make money on Facebook, but I don't. Like I said, every once in a while I do something from the heart that happens to fit, in the box where people, really jump on it, right? And it's usually something tragic, unfortunately. But, the World Economic Forum, for example, Save Our Children, I did that video where I put together the compilation of trying to wake people up to the fact that CPS is in this game and responsible for a lot of the child trafficking that goes on. Like I'll throw a video like that out, not to make money, but because, I feel it's important, and then boom, the video takes off. And then what do? I go, do I start, I do put up other videos about that. I talk about it, but I didn't become, I'm not going to exploit it for money, right? I think my last couple Article 5 videos made $5 or something like that. I got like 2,000 views. You know, I mean, it's not about the money, right? Like to me, you know, it's about YouTube. I don't even try to, you know, I still stream to YouTube just because out of respect for the 1,400 people that had original. I mean, we haven't moved, you know, up or down. And YouTube, there might be where I'll get a few, you know, 4,000 or 5,000. Some videos will get 10 or 15,000. YouTube is like 30. Like I don't even play the game with YouTube anymore. I don't even play that. You know, Rumble's a few hundred, right? But we don't have as big a following there. But obviously, my main pie here is Facebook. I mean, we've got 16,000, 16,005, you know, whatever followers, and you know they're active, right? We got a group. If you don't know the Patriot think tank group, so you can search for that under groups. It's wide open. I don't admin it at all. I just let people post whatever the hell they want. Facebook may jump in. They jump in all the time. But even though they've restricted the group, it still grew to over 1,000 people. So you will get alerts there as well. I post, when I do post a video, I do an ad everyone every once in a while, and we'll post the video there. So you'll get alerts where Facebook, you know, out of 16,000 people, Facebook alerts like maybe 100 that, that I'm going on. So, so Drink Coaster over on Twitch. So what is the end goal here? The end goal, Drink Coaster, is to amend the United States Constitution to severely restrict the power of the federal government. That is the main goal. That's what this is all about. And the topics that the real convention will discuss are term limits for all government officials, even though they tweaked some out of this one. But it'll be all government officials if it gets done properly. The second one is fiscal restraints. So this is where I was bringing up repealing the 16th Amendment and balanced budget amendments, things of that nature. You know, things that will shut down the fiscal waste that is our federal government. And then lastly is the government overreach of authority. So anything that's not given to them in the 10th Amendment, which if you're not familiar with the 10th Amendment, it basically says any power not given to the federal government in this Constitution does not belong to the government, belongs to the states, which would effectively, you know, take the states out of education, work safety, every single organization and, you know, environment, every single organization the federal government has stuck its face into, it would no longer be its responsibility. Those would all fall on the states. All of those things would be governed locally without the bureaucracy. So that's the reason. I hope that answers it for you. All right, let me see here. I will try and grab a few last comments. We're approaching an hour and a half, which is usually the point where my beer ticker starts going, and I gotta go get myself a cold one and get out of this hot room where I'm catching a tan. So this is interesting. Rocky over in Thailand says, not sure if you know about what's going on in Thailand, but it's the same as the U.S., totally corrupt, but maybe big protests coming. We'll see, Rocky. I mean, look, all over the world, man, you know, it's time. It's time to fight. And I'm telling these folks, these international folks, like, get yourself educated on this issue because it impacts your country as much as it does ours, right? Like again, if we fall, it's over for you. Any fights that you were planning on taking up internally, forget it. If there's no U.S. out there, we're the big fish. If they take us down, they've been prying away at this Constitution for 60, 70 years now. And they drove a couple generations batshit crazy, but they haven't gotten through. They can get Twitter and whatever else to Facebook to restrict speech and whatever, but they can't restrict it totally, right? Just can't do it. Cannot control the message. Cannot control the message. So yeah, absolutely. Folks all over the world need to, be handling business in their own countries. But at the same time, you got to have one eye on the United States because even if you hate our government, you know what? Take a number, right? In the end, you know, we're not big fans. We're big fans of our government system. We're not big fans of our government. You can love your country and be disgusted with your government. And that's where we're at now. And there's only one way to fix that, folks, and that's right here. That's what we're preaching. That's what we're preaching. Danny says Second Amendment is the only thing keeping us alive. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The Constitution as a whole is what's. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying though. Like what, you know, if we didn't have the Second Amendment, you know, they probably just storm the streets, start treating us like Aussies, right? Saw what happened in Australia, right, during the lockdowns. So you didn't see any of that crap here because they ain't having any of that. There's a town up in northern California. I want to say it borders Oregon. I'm not sure of the small town, but it's always been a traditionally, you know, incredibly like constitutionally conservative town. And there was an incident there during COVID where they opened up one of their restaurants and police went to shut it down. And they basically, you know, like half the town showed up armed. And we're like, look, we don't think we want you to close this restaurant today. And like, you want to come back here with state troopers? And if that's the fight Gavin Newsom wants to put up, okay. But if you shoot someone here today, just know there's going to be return fire. And they left. They were like, this ain't worth it. And that's one of those America moments, right? Chinese communism would happen fast if we were not armed. Yeah, it's happening fast now, isn't it? I mean, you know, one of the reasons why I really like DeSantis is because I think of all the candidates, he's the most dialed in on China. Now, he's only addressed it at the state level for obvious reasons. But the stuff he's done, you don't even hear other candidates talking about. Like Confucius Institutes. That's something like for my podcast. It's not something a presidential candidate talks about, right? Like knowing, not only knowing what the Confucius Institutes are and how to deal with them, but banning them in your state. Like that blow alone, if that were the case in all 50 states, that would hurt China. That would hurt. The tariff was a symbolic gesture, and it, you know, it was more. It was fun because, you know, it was finally someone flipping the bird, you know, to the CCP. But the Confucius Institutes, that hurts them because now you're taking their influence. Now you're removing their influence. If you don't know what a Confucius Institute is, these are the organizations that for decades have been infiltrating our universities and turning out our children the way they have. You know, all of those raging maniacs running across the streets, blowing stuff up. They don't know anything about civics. They don't know anything about anything. Yeah, those are all products of the Confucius Institutes, right? So, and DeSantis identified that and got rid of them. Those are the kind of changes, you know, you really want to see. Rocky says, do not give up your guns, right? So that, Rocky, you guys aren't allowed guns in Thailand, I would assume. So, but yeah, no, we're not giving up our guns. There's no threat of anyone giving up guns here. I don't know. I don't know how long it's been since you stepped foot in the States, or if you have stepped foot in the States, but it doesn't take very long to get the message that no one here are giving up their guns. Oh, you said many guns there. Okay, cool. And it's legal. Everything's fine. I mean, I got to make that distinction, right? Many guns in Thailand, yeah. But is it legal? Or is it just like, you know, Wild West kind of thing? So, but anyway, look, guys, for those of you watching this after, you know, who may have missed the live stream, still comment. I want to hear what you think about the different amendment proposals. I want to hear about, you know, like what your take is, maybe what proposal you'd like to hear or you'd like to see proposed. You know, keep in mind, you know, what these guys proposed at this particular simulation. You know, they were trying to do in 2 to 3 days what normally would get done in 6 or 8 months. So this is a process, you know, but this is a process that takes time, but it's something that I want everybody to take an honest look at. I want everyone to kind of take a ride over there to Convention of States Project YouTube channel or Rumble channel and watch through it. You don't have to sit there. Some of it could get boring. It's legislative and whatever, but just watch the process. Just watch them, go back and forth, over, what's important to one, what's important to another. One guy gets up, I want to amend this, I want to amend that. And when they say that, they mean amend the amendment. Like, I want to make a change to the proposed amendment, before I'll vote for it, and that sort of thing. And just watch the back and forth. Watch how the thought process works, right? It's good to see. We all love to eat the sausage, but no one wants to see how it's made, right? It's nice once in a while to just see how it's made. And that's what this whole exercise was about. These state legislators hopefully will go back to their states and educate their peers, right? Which again may hopefully help push some of these states along in the journey, right? And that's what we need. And as far as you're concerned and what your effort and what your contribution can be, well, it starts with signing the petition. So go right on the front page of my website, thepatriotthinktank.com. You will see the button right in the middle of the screen, sign the petition. It'll take you over to that page of the COS website where you can go ahead, sign the petition, click volunteer, find out what's going on in your district, right? Find out, what can you do to help out? Maybe your district is, maybe they need a district captain. Maybe they need leadership in some other area. Maybe they just need some skill you have that would help them out greatly. Or, maybe they take a drive to the Capitol. If you're retired, you got some time, or even if you don't, you can take a day off. Whatever the event is, whatever's going on, just get involved, right? And there are some things that all of us can do. And one of those things is educate your neighbors and educate your friends and family. So, before that happens, you've got to educate yourself, right? So, when you get a call from your district captain or state director or whatever the situation in your district is, they're going to walk you through. You're going to do COS University, a bunch of really cool videos, just enlighten you as to what the founder's intent was, and really give you that heavy dose of civics that I think most of us are yearning for, right? That heavy dose of, of positive, civics that are, and it's positive because what they did was so legit, right? And it's just like getting that dosage and then walking away empowered, to go speak to your local legislator, write a handwritten letter. They're very powerful. Write a handwritten letter, right? Everyone reads a handwritten letter. Everyone. I don't care if I get 10 of them. If I get 10 handwritten letters, I'm going to read every one of them because and you will too, because you're going to be like, who the hell? But like, if someone wrote it by hand, they meant it, right? So you're going to read it. So do that, right? Let your legislator know. Let your local district legislator know. And who knows? Maybe you're in a really key state, right? Maybe you live in, Iowa or Pennsylvania, or there's a bunch. I mean, Jersey. These are big states that can join in, right? I mean, and they're all swingable. They're all swingable because we're focused only on local. It's not even governor big, right? We're talking district big. We're talking, your individual district. I mean, I don't know about you. Mine changes like every freaking cycle. I gotta look it up all the time because they gerrymander here in California so much. It's like out of control that you can walk the streets and be like, this is a completely conservative city that I live in. But at the same time, it always goes blue. You're like, how is that even possible? But it happens. But nonetheless, I've still sent letters to the Democrat that run like it, and because it matters. It matters. And if you do it in mass, here's the thing, right? The reason the founders liked it this way is because it doesn't take 1 million, 2 million, 3 million to turn over a piece of state legislation. Like if a few hundred people go to your local legislator, and a few hundred people is a lot of people. If 100 people, heck, I've heard Mike tell me stories of like 16 people showing up and having a serious impact. Because these folks, they know their constituents. They get engaged. They're running for a reason. They're not getting paid a lot of money. They're doing this out of the love. They're doing it because they're statesmen. They're doing it because it's service. Yes, there are a handful out there who are trying to get to another level, but the majority of them throughout the country are they're just doing service. They're just doing service. And I thank them for their service whenever I see them, because it's worth thanking them for it. Who wants to be the freaking instant bad guy? So Rocky over in town, the world is watching the United States. I believe that. I really believe that. And look, we get a heavy dose of propaganda, here in the United States for sure from our media. And I know the rest of the world gets their version. Like, everyone's getting a heaping helping of mainstream media propaganda. And but in the end, from what I gather from the sane people who I follow and look to, that are international, that everyone in the world knows that this is, like, you get a lot of feedback here in the United States. Oh, the rest of the world hates you so much. I'm like, I don't think they do. I'm like, I think the rest of the world are dealing with the same crap we are, that they got a government that's doing some whacked out crap and they're trying to stop it, right? Ronald Sanderson over at Facebook. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you. Glad to have you on, sir. Thank you for the comment. But in the end, look, we're all in this together, right? That's what it comes down to. And we all need to do the things that we can. And right now, that thing is Article 5. And that thing is local. That thing is, not far from you. And if you don't know where to start, like I said, sign the petition, click volunteer, and it will automatically, by the way, send a letter off to your local legislator for you, okay, on your behalf, right? And then at the same time, when you click volunteer, they will reach out to you and they'll help you get started, right? They'll help you get started. And frankly, with this channel, right, if I can, anybody that I'm able to motivate to get off the couch and go have at it, right? And maybe you don't have time. Maybe you have some money to donate. Maybe you don't have money, but you'd have some time to donate. Maybe you can show up occasionally at a meeting or, whatever it is. But know, number one, what your district is. Number two, your district representative is more important to this country than the president is. And if anything, if there's any part of this civics lesson that you should walk away with, and one of the reasons that I call it the greatest civics lesson ever told is because I don't think everyone understands that. I don't think the way you organize is by district. This is how it works. You go to your district, you get as many people as you can, you educate them, you get them to go to the district, you're all going to the same district. Now we've got a champion in your, one more champion for the calling of a convention of states. One more man in a powerful seat who's screaming for liberty. Right? Your neighbors go to their districts, right? And you build. South Carolina, they turned around. I remember it took years for them to pass their resolution. And when they finally did, they were like, I was totally against this before I read my way to being for it. And I thought that was just a powerful statement because it came from legislators all over the country, all these different debates that were going on. The ones that turned, the states that ended up signing on, that was all of the same story. They were all like, I was against it until I read my way to being for it. Our founders were smart men. It's important that people understand that. There's an element of faith in humanity that you have to have, or nothing gets done. If the only people you have faith in is that evildoers will do evil, and you have no faith that good people will do good, what are you setting yourself up for? Right? At some point, and the founders are smart enough to know that it's the local yokel who's going to be the guy who's generally good. It's the guy who doesn't have aspirations to be the president of the United States that's going to be good. And that's why the local legislatures are the ones that they chose to be the most powerful body in this country. So on that note, folks, I am past the hour and a half. I hope you did learn something today with these proposed amendments. I will be back every Wednesday, 5:30. I do have a series going on. I probably have one more video to put out on the convention simulation, although you will hear me talk about it pretty regularly because it's that big of a deal. And I want to get as many people as possible. Like, really what I'm turning into now is just trying to get people to learn civics. That's it. No more of this social studies nonsense. None of it. Social studies is not even a subject. It's like 10 subjects, none of which are relevant to the United States. Twisted history, pieces of civics, everything hand-selected, civics. Straight civics. How this country runs, how it's designed to run, and how we can use that very process to get everything that we want. But it's got to, in order for that to happen, we've got to change the relationship between us and the federal government. And there's only one way. If I thought there were 5 different ways, I'd have shows on debating it. There's only one way. And I'm gonna say it till I'm blue in the face. If we will call this convention, and when it's done, that to celebrate, we're gonna party like it's 1999. It'll no jokes. All right, folks. So get out there, sign the petition. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment where you're watching from. Want to know? Until next week.
And like that,